we're going to take time this Saturday morning to dive into the human toll of what's been going on in Iran, this illegal war that Donald Trump has orchestrated. While we're getting started, if you do me a favor, hit the heart button for us so more people get a chance to join. Leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching it from. You can tell us how the weather is in your hometown. I mean, frankly, I'd like to hear if other people are enjoying decent weather right now. And then, otherwise we'll dive right in. So Adam, like my first thing is I'm going to bring up something that you and I were just texting about like 10 minutes before we got started. Is this is such a serious conflict, and we watched. I would argue this murder of all these little kids in this bombing in the Iran school. We've seen, numerous American military officials. We've seen civilians who have been killed now and attacked. And it feels like it's being treated by this administration like it's a video game. And they're posting cool memes and they're trying to look cool and they're doing all this weird stuff. And I just want to start with getting your take on it because it feels like a full lack of seriousness from very unserious people about something that is so real.
Yeah, the entire thing that I go back to is that this all was unnecessary, incredibly unnecessary. Donald Trump was pulled into this war by Netanyahu because Netanyahu has spent his entire adult life wanting to go to war with Iran. He was just waiting for a U.S. president that was dumb enough to do it. And the consequences of that have been catastrophic for thousands of Iranians that have died already over the past week. The 160 school children. I keep seeing the photo of that young boy with the backpack. So incredibly tragic, makes me tear up every single time. And then even in January, tens of thousands of Iranians who took to the streets to protest were killed by the Iranian regime because the Trump administration said that they would have their back. Donald Trump tweeted out and said, go out and protest. I'll have your back. They went out and protested, were killed by the Iranian regime, and then Trump did nothing until 2 months later. And I'm just saying he was inconsistent. He has caused death. He backed out, and then he went in 2 months too late, and it has caused so many deaths. Not to mention the 6 U.S. service members who passed away. When I say passed away, that makes it sound too passive. They were killed in a war that Donald Trump started. That's the reality. 6 of them.
I'm not convinced. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm not convinced they're being honest with us about the number of people who have lost their lives that are American military personnel.
Yeah, it could be more because we know that the casualties, so people injured, is like 18 to 22. And one of the dudes who died was 20 years old. That's the one that I did some research on because it just reminds me, he grew up like 2 states over from me and I was doing research. Incredibly sad. And throughout all of this, the headlines by the Trump administration are about Grand Theft Auto memes. They're posting Call of Duty memes. They're posting baseball edits where when somebody swings the bat, an explosion goes off, explosions that are killing like children. And it's all sickening. It's a normalization and a desensitization to death, destruction, and war that we don't want to see in the United States, especially coming from our leadership, which is a term I use loosely. They're not really leading us. And throughout all of this, again, we talk about the military weaponry that's destroyed, the depletion of ammunition. We talk about these numbers of bases that are struck. And all of this stuff is important. It's important to talk about the ammunition, as I'll continue to talk about. But in that, we kind of get lost in the fact that, like, people have died for no reason. For no reason. People who've sent their sons and daughters to a base and thought they would be safe, entrusted them in the hands of the U.S. military to come back home for the holidays. There's now 6 families or more, potentially, as you said, who have lost their children. Just in the United States, hundreds of families, thousands of families who have lost their children in Iran. And this was all unforced. Unforced in the sense that leaders chose actions with predictably catastrophic consequences that could have been avoided. This could have been avoided. This was unforced by our enemies. Nobody forced us to do this other than Netanyahu and Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I don't think the American military should ever be dog walked into a war by an ally of ours. And this is what bothers me is like, look, the debate over Israel, you can be pro-Israel, you can be anti-Israel, you can be somewhere in the middle. I tend to find myself somewhere in the middle if there's 2 camps. But like, we should not be having a foreign leader basically drag our president into a war. And it's exactly what happened 8 months ago with the first strike on Iran. Like they claimed like Israel was going to go, so we're going to go with them. And it was very clear that some kind of deal had been struck. And then they claimed that they had destroyed Iran's nuclear capability and said, if you argued that we didn't, you were a liar and you were part of the lamestream media trying to make President Trump look bad. And now 8 months later, they're trying to argue again that there was some kind of imminent threat on the American people by the Iranian government, which there wasn't. And if they wanted to create in actual argument that this was the moment to go in Iran and do something. And the regime over there is terrible. Let's be clear about that. I'm not mourning the death of the Ayatollah or anything like that. And I'm sure, whatever leadership structure they have in place right now isn't a group of particularly good people either. But there were, 30, 50,000 people who were in the streets, who were killed by their own government in Iran. They had an opportunity and a justification months ago to say, we're going to go step in and stop this from happening. And they didn't. They promised they were going to help the people of Iran who flooded to the streets. Now they've sort of, in my view, they've lost the people and they've lost the popular support. They're losing support from governments all across the Middle East because they're frustrated at the instability. They've done nothing to explain this to the American people. They've been incredibly disrespectful, I think, to members of the military who have lost their lives and who serve and don't deserve to be treated like, pawns in a video game thing. Like the whole, them posting a meme from Tropic Thunder to make themselves look cool and Ben Stiller having to call that out for what it is. And by the way, I love Tropic Thunder. I think it's a great movie. It's supposed to be a parody of this kind of stuff, and they don't realize that. It's just really, it's gross and it's disrespectful and it's to Trump. The rest of us are all, it's toy fucking soldiers. Like we're just all toys, pawns in his little arsenal that he can move around because he knows that he'll never face accountability for anything that he does, which is really sad, and why in this next election, I think we have to elect as many Democrats who understand that accountability has to be demanded from these people in the next Congress and when we get a new president in 2029.
That is very, very important. I mean, we saw that with James Tallarico, who just won a Senate primary in the state of Texas. He is somebody who demands accountability. You talked about Ben Stiller quote tweeting the White House. Just for context, the White House has been posting a series of memes, as we said, of Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, video games. It's clearly some 28 to 35-year-old person who is running the comms for the White House, the Department of Homeland Security, and they are memeing in order to gain attention. One of the videos they posted had a meme from Tropic Thunder. Looks like it has a still from Better Call Saul, from the Avengers, from a bunch of movies. And Ben Stiller, actor-director, he quote tweeted it and said, "Hey, White House, please remove the Tropic Thunder clip. We never gave you permission and have no interest in being part of your propaganda machine. War is not a movie." And this got 663,000 likes. It's coming up to 30 million views, currently at 29 million views. So this is backfiring for the administration. It is all backfiring for the administration. We see through their narrative, and they wanted to gain attention based on these meme clips. They gained attention in the form of Ben Stiller dunking on them. You also mentioned that the United States should not get dog walked into war. We've been talking on my show about how I have sources who, I have some Iranian American friends and close allies who have sources within the consulate that were telling us what actually happened. We did a call. They told us what actually happened over the past month, and it was exactly what we thought, but even worse. So just to back up, Marco Rubio was basically the one who was the closest to telling the truth when he said that Israel was striking first and that they said, you're either striking with us now or you're going to get pulled into it eventually. But it even gets worse than that. Apparently, Donald Trump just wanted this to be exactly like Venezuela. He even admitted that yesterday. He thought this was going to be a repeat of Venezuela, where you decapitate the head and then the number 2 or the number 3 takes power. It's basically nothing happens. There's no harm, no foul. It's a nothing burger. He gets to declare victory, even though nothing substantive took place and it's the same regime. Netanyahu did not want that plan. He wanted an entire regime change. So he undercut Trump. He swiped Trump and he said, we are going to essentially kill the number 2, the number 3, the number 4, the number 5. So that's why Trump had to come out and say, we accidentally killed all of the replacements. It was Netanyahu who did that. And Donald Trump just got dragged along. And then Iran continued to retaliate in a more forceful manner than most people expected because they're trying to prove a point right now. And it's all because of Netanyahu and Donald Trump's weakness. He's getting dog walked, as you said. I just wanted to add that framework.
No, I mean, and to me, it's embarrassing to watch the president of the United States of any political party just out there being like, well, we planned on putting the number 2 in place, but we killed him by accident. And then we thought we'd put the number 3 in place, but turns out he died too. And I'm like, they didn't have a plan. And say what you will, I'm only here talking to you, I think, because of how angry I was about the Iraq war and spent much of my high school and college years protesting that and became politically active and eventually turned that into the career that I have now. Say what you will about George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and the rest of them. They had a plan. It was a bad plan. Let's be clear about that. But they had a plan. They really thought they were going to be greeted as liberators. They were going to create democracy all throughout the Middle East. It was going to be this wellspring of change. They were full of shit, but they had a plan, and they put allies together and they put it on paper and they went and executed it. There's no plan here. They're just flying by night, and it's going to get so much worse because of that. It's maddening to me. And I want to go back just 1 second to the seriousness of their leadership, because one, part of the reason they're doing these goofy video game memes and Tropic Thunder and stuff like that is that they think they're appealing to their coalition of young men, right? Which would, I think, include you, but no longer include me.
No, it would.
I don't think so. I think I'm too old to be in their pocket of people. But
I don't know. They're looking for like the people under 50 who aren't generally super activated to be like younger dudes. I mean,
sure,
you're a young dude.
Okay, fine. I'll accept that. But like, I'll take it as a compliment.
We start debating over what young means, or you're
exactly,
young.
Exactly. But it's what did they promise young men in 2024 that sent so many people, white, black, brown, young men, over to them? It was good paying jobs. We're not going to send you over to another war. We're not going to keep taking advantage of you the way that the Democrats have been, et cetera, et cetera. Like all of that stuff. And they've basically turned the page or lied about all of that and completely flip-flopped on all of it. The job market's a mess. They've launched another illegal war. Wages aren't growing. Everything's more expensive. We haven't even talked about oil prices yet. So these stupid memes that they're doing, which are supposed to be being put in front of these young men to rally them around the cause, are likely going to backfire because young men don't want to be sent overseas to another illegal war. They just don't. They don't want to see people their own age die. It's part of what radicalized me to become a Democrat. It's probably the most foundational aspect of my politics, is that I don't think young men should be sent over for a war that basically benefits defense contractors and oil companies and other governments. Like, I just don't think that ever makes sense. And I want to tie that to some of the comments that Trump has made in this last week, because the way that he's talking about this war is super cavalier to me. And he gets asked a question by a reporter, are there going to be more military deaths? And he goes, there might be. Those things just happen during these conflicts, which is horrendous. But you can go, and maybe this is a good time to talk about the oil prices now. It's impacting people. But somebody asked him, Mr. President, are we going to see oil prices get higher? And he's like, if they go higher, they go higher. And I'm like, holy shit. It's like there's just no... He doesn't understand the seriousness of this. I mean, the oil prices have risen. I think this is the largest jump in oil prices ever.
One more. My dad texted me this article last night to build on your point. At midnight, it said, Trump asked if Americans should be worried about retaliatory attacks at home. Quote, I guess. He said, I guess. He said, if it happens, it happens. My dad said, how the hell is this guy our president, and how do so many people support him? I don't get it. It seems like he lacks any empathy or concern for the general public. My dad's not someone who's always like talking about this stuff. So it's like,
yeah, unfortunately, my dad has gone full pro-war.
Yeah.
But consistent with my father, because my father was very pro-Iraq war and went overseas to investigate defense contractors. So I'll give him his consistency in that.
We should have our dad's debate on it.
That would actually be really fun. I would enjoy the shit out of it. But it's just it's maddening. And I don't know if you saw, there was a story that I read in the middle of the night when I got up to pee. Was about how the FBI is trying to signal to local law enforcement agencies and most Americans that there's a heightened risk of terror attacks right now. And the White House is preventing them from doing that. I imagine, I didn't read the whole thing and I'm a little hazy on it, but I think it has to do with the warning system that exists for terror attacks, and the White House is preventing them for it. So to a certain degree, I feel like the White House wants there to be a terror attack. I feel like they want to invite that type of chaos, maybe because they can use it to disrupt the midterm elections. They can use it to justify martial law in certain big American cities. I don't know.
Or at the very least, they're like apathetic and criminally negligent.
Yes.
At the very least, they are so negligent that if something happens after they have pulled certain sectors of our DOJ, our Homeland Security, they're replacing the leadership of the Homeland Security in the middle of this. I'm pretty sure Kash Patel, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there reporting that Kash Patel fired a key division like 2 weeks ago that would have protected our security? Yes. Regarding the oil prices, Donald Trump had a catastrophic day yesterday. The morning was awful, and I had a tweet that went viral that essentially said, he began to fund our own enemies inadvertently. I saw that you quote tweeted as well with that meme that just perfectly encapsulates it. But my tweet essentially said, let me pull this up, that oil prices began to surge as the Strait of Hormuz, that small passage where 20 to 30% of the oil travels through, that slowed to a halt. It's off the coast of Iran, right off the border. So the Strait of Hormuz began to get choked and ships couldn't pass through it. That caused oil prices to surge. They're still surging, and markets were in shock. Right after that, we learned that 92,000 jobs were unexpectedly lost in February, so markets were shocked even further. And then one of the energy ministers of Qatar predicted that oil prices would reach $150 a barrel was his prediction. So Donald Trump begins to ease sanctions on Russian oil, so other countries can begin to buy this oil more effectively, with more free flow, more supply of the oil. But that just gives Russia more money. And then we get a headline that Russia is helping give Iran intelligence to target U.S. troops. So essentially, Russia has more money to inflict more damage on Ukraine, help Iran inflict more damage on the United States, make the world an inherently more dangerous place, all because Donald Trump couldn't just keep his hands to himself. This is the chain reaction of global events. This is how it happens. If you just tip one domino over and fuck with one country and try to change the regime of one single country, there is a domino effect where now we have to ease sanctions. U.S. citizens are effed. Iranian citizens are effed. Russia is in a stronger position. China can probably invade Taiwan. What are we going to do? All of our munitions are being wasted in an Iranian war that nobody wanted to get into.
Well, and it's amazing to me, and this is why, like, my response to your tweet was the meme of I think it's the night sky probably in Tel Aviv, and it's missiles on this side that are coming, and then missiles that are intercepting it on the other, and it says my taxpayer dollars somehow also my taxpayer dollars, and that's often how it feels to me. And you can go back to the Iraq war, go back to the Taliban for a second and going in Afghanistan. Like, we got to go take down the Taliban. Well, where did they get their weapons? They got it from us in the 80s, right? Because we were helping them defeat the Russians in the 80s. It's a great movie, Charlie Wilson's War, if you've never watched it, about that whole ball of wax. It's a really good movie. Tom Hanks plays Congressman Wilson. This stuff keeps happening, and even now, there's another story about how we're currently in the process of arming. I think it's Kurdish rebels in Iran again, and so we're like giving them weapons so that they can go wage an uprising against the Iranian government. And like, it's great, but like, in 10 or 15 years, we might be having to have a conversation about how we have to take them down now. And so we keep playing this sort of game where over and over again, we destabilize the region, we declare war, we move on with our lives because it's so far away. And then 20 years later, something happens that draws us back in. It's really, really frustrating. And then on the oil prices, to me, it's another example of how callous Donald Trump is being with this war. One of the few, you and I have debated a lot of these MAGA guys, one of the few talking points that they have is that oil prices were down, that gas prices were lower for the average American. It was 10 cents, 20 cents. It wasn't a huge deal. I'd usually push back and mention that car prices are through the roof right now, and the average car payment is $750. But they had that one thing, and they've obliterated that. So you want to talk about the human toll. Obviously, there are people who are losing their lives over in Iran and the rest of the Middle East. There's American military personnel who are hurt. But I also want you to think about the fact that 50% of Americans right now say they can't afford to pay their mortgage. 60, 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. There are a lot of people who are doing everything right. They're hanging on for dear life. They were promised that things were going to get better under Donald Trump and his economy. Everything's more expensive. Now, how many people are one bad day away from giving up on supporting their family and trying to make it to that next stage of life that they can get to? And now their gas prices are going to go to $5 a gallon.
This is already after Donald Trump inflicted a $1,000 increase on families via his tariffs in 2025, according to studies. This is after the healthcare subsidies did not renew, so the premium skyrocketed. And we have some specific numbers coming from CNN 7 minutes ago. It says U.S. gas prices surged to highest average since August of 2024. And by the way, whether you're watching this on Substack or watching this after on YouTube, make sure you follow both Mike Nellis and the Adam Mockler feed. We are both constantly fighting back against the MAGA BS with the truth, with real fact patterns in a time where Russia, Iran, Trump, Elon, they want nothing more than to stir chaos. I mean, the Iranian regime, the Trump administration, they all just want to stir chaos. We will continue to push back, to continue. Gas prices shot up another 9 cents a gallon in the latest reading from AAA this morning. The average price of gas has climbed 43 cents in just the last week. That is catastrophic for the average American family who is already paycheck to paycheck. Consumer sentiment has already hit a decade low, the lowest it's been since 2014. The average price has climbed to the highest point since March of 2022, which is right around the time that Russia was hit with widespread sanctions because it invaded Ukraine. So a 43-cent jump in 1 week is crazy. The latest rise is a reaction to the war in Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, where 20 to 30% of the world's oil passes. Most of the price increases happen in just a 5-day span, and more price hikes are likely on the way. Wow.
I mean, it's absolutely crazy. You know, there's I don't want to say the name of it because I don't want to get them in trouble just because I'm a political figure, but there's a nonprofit that I'm involved in, and they help provide certain products to certain people who are like on the brink. And one of the things they talk about is that you never know when that one moment is that you're going to give up, that somebody's just going to give up and they're going to whatever. I mean, you hear these things about, like, you know, young men that turn to drugs and addiction, and they become they lose their lives and stuff like that. And then you hear about these people that, you know, turn to crime and things like that. But there's always a moment for somebody where they give up. And then part of the concept behind the nonprofit is we're going to be one of those groups that can like give you a moment of hope, right? We're going to give a little bit of help. And I just think about how many families are increasingly struggling, and how in this moment it might be $5, $6 gallon of gas is what gets you. And I just think that Trump doesn't think about that. And I want to tie that to the cost of the war as well, because the first 100 hours of the war cost $4 billion. And now we're a week later, so let's assume that number is probably 12, 15 billion, if not more, as they've expanded the scope of it. And that's before we put ground troops down in Iran, which, based on what we've heard from Democratic senators who have been briefed, it seems likely that that is what the Trump administration wants to do. It's just so much money. And I come back to, I know that America First for MAGA is a dog whistle. They want to make that about, you know, white America more than anything else. But there is value to sitting here and going, hey, we got to invest in this country first, because at least in my lifetime, I've been doing this for 20 years. We've spent so much money elsewhere, in Iraq and Afghanistan and now Iran. How much money did we send to Argentina early last year because Trump's friend was in trouble? So we gave them a couple $2 billion. When do the American people get their bailout?
Yeah.
Because when I suggest that we spend money to make sure that people don't go bankrupt when they get sick, I get called a communist. And I have to laugh because it's so silly, but like, we can't do anything, according to the Republicans, to spend American money to improve America, to build a better road, to build a highway, to get high-speed rail, to make sure that college kids aren't dragged down by debt for the rest of their lives. God, my brother's got hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan debt because he chose to go be a doctor, and it is an albatross around his neck. And he works harder than anybody else that I know. He serves more people than anybody I've ever met, except for a couple members of my family that are in the military. So it's just, it's maddening to me to see how callous we are to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars to blow shit up, but we can't build anything.
Really quickly, a few of the commenters' minds went to exactly where my mind was going. Bev Ferguson and then Coffee Cat said exactly what I was thinking. So the administration just made the request for $50 billion more to fund this war in Iran. That is basically the exact dollar amount that we used to spend on USAID. This was a humanitarian effort that cost $68 billion. We're going to quickly exceed that with our Iranian war. And this was additive, a humanitarian effort that would save people. It was a difference between a newborn baby dying from an easily preventable disease or having the vaccine in order to live a fruitful life and contribute to this globe in a meaningful way. And rather than doing that, we cut USAID. We cut the $68 billion, and we reallocated that towards a war with Iran, with bombing Venezuela. Donald Trump is now talking about Cuba right now, like literally right now, while he's giving a meeting in Doral, Florida, with the leaders from Latin America. He wants to fund another war. It's just so disgusting that we have to cut these humanitarian efforts. I wish we had a foreign policy that was focused on human dignity and self-determination. So if the United States were to get involved in some sort of conflict, not that we do it militarily, but if we were to give money towards a Ukraine or to help the starving people of Gaza or to help stop the settlements in the West Bank, then we do it for self-determination to spread actual good causes. But other than that, we should spend this money at home. We should maybe do humanitarian efforts. I mean, we should definitely do humanitarian efforts. But I'm just so sick of the endless wars, the endless justifications. People are bending over backwards. We do see some MAGA figures breaking. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Matt Walsh was pretty skeptical.
Matt Walsh is welcome to the resistance, buddy.
Yeah, is Megyn Kelly now flipping? Am I wrong on that? Megyn Kelly?
Megyn Kelly's all over the place. The thing about Kelly is she believes in nothing. Like she's a lot like Candace Owens, in that Candace Owens will just kind of go wherever she thinks there's clicks. So but I do think there's some of these guys, like a Matt Walsh, who does seem like he believes something. And he's got a line where he's like, I won't cross it. That does not mean that Matt Walsh is our friend, because Matt Walsh believes in a lot of things that are disgusting. Nick Fuentes is another one, right? Fuentes is a white supremacist, but he does not believe that young men in this country should be shipped off to war for Israel, basically. I don't know how else to describe it. It's how this feels.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, I'm not an anti-Israel Democrat. I'm not a pro-Israel Democrat either, but they're really jostling me to become anti. But I want to go back to, because you mentioned
with Israel really quickly, there's been this for the past 2 decades in American politics. There's been this weird veil of non-criticism. If you criticize it, you're crossing this line. But they should be like any other ally, where funding them is based on 2 criteria. Number 1, are they the good guys? And number 2, will us funding them make any meaningful difference in their ability to win the war? So let's apply those to Ukraine. Are they the good guys? Yeah, we both think they're the good guys. Will us funding them actually help them or change anything? Yes, genuinely. Funding Ukraine would change a lot. With Israel, are they the good guys? I mean, at this point, no, they're not.
I'm not argue with the way they've treated the Palestinian people.
They are so bad. They're not the good guys. Okay, right. Us funding them, help them. No, I mean, they still have their own healthcare system, free healthcare, Iron Dome. It's so bad that we're just funding them unconditionally. So criticizing them is okay. You know what I will say? Israel should have the right to have borders that are not broken by other territory. They should have the right to self-determination and sovereignty just like any other state, but they need to stop the damn settlements in the West Bank. So with that framework, we also don't want them dragging us into this war when we can't ever stand up to them. We cannot ever stand up to them. Sorry to derail your thoughts, but I think I just want to...
I think it's an important point. And what I remind people all the time is the Israeli government is different than the people of Israel. All right. The Palestinian government is different than the people of Palestine. The American government is different than the American people. All right. How many people, including people who voted for this clown, don't feel like they're getting what they voted for, or at least don't feel like they're being represented? So I think we have to kind of remember that. I am supportive of the safety and the autonomy of the people of Israel in the same way that I am for the people of Palestine. I do not support this government. I do not support Bibi Netanyahu. And I do believe that he has conducted a genocide on the Palestinian people. I do believe that he allowed so many people to die of starvation for no reason. And I think it is absolutely wrong for the United States government to prop up Israel's military, to support so much of what they do, and then dog walk us into a war. We are the ones who are supposed to lead the world. And this is the biggest problem. America has gone from, and America's not perfect. America's never been perfect, not under a Democratic president or a Republican president. But we are supposed to be the good guys, and we're supposed to be the ones that are bringing people together to try to solve the world's biggest issues. And there's different ways that you can do that, and you alluded to it earlier, but there's soft power, there's hard power, and then there's economics, right? We've obliterated our ability to do anything with soft power by getting rid of USAID. And most of the programs that existed for USAID are not themselves necessarily gone. They've just been filled in by China. So China now has more soft power than it has ever had on the international stage. We have hard power, which is our military, and Trump it's about the only thing he has left to use is basically threatening military. It's trying to take Greenland. It's trying to it's trying to put ground troops in Iran. Now, God knows what he's going to do with Cuba and the rest of it. And then there's economics. But on economics, we've also isolated ourselves too with these tariffs. So it's a perfect storm of a place where America has gone from a leader to an antagonist. We are the world's greatest antagonist right now. If you asked anybody outside of this country, they would say, who is creating the most amount of chaos and turmoil and pain? And they would say the United States of America. And that is not good. It makes Americans less safe. And I think one of the challenges that we have as political commentators, Adam, is, and USAID was a great example of this, the reason they went after USAID first is because individually the projects inside of USAID are hard to explain to the American people when they want investment back home. They're like, why are we investing in Irish folk dancing and stuff like that? It sounds odd when we're doing things like that. There's a reason and a madness behind it. What Democrats have to do is be able to explain the value of soft power on the international stage and explain it to the average American. This keeps you safe because it makes us influential here, 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 and here. And when there's a conflict, when India, and here's a great example. India and Palestine had that like week-long conflict, right? It's one of the wars that Trump claims that he ended, which wasn't really a war. That's a conflict, in my opinion, that never happens with a strong American president. Because when it's about to get to the point where they're going to start shooting at one another, the United States of America steps in with its soft power, its hard power, and its economic power and makes sure that both sides keep away from each other and prevents that. Was it Pakistan? I apologize if I said it wrong. It's just that's a perfect example to me of something that never happens under Joe Biden or George W. Bush or Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan. It just doesn't happen.
We're going to continue covering this every single Saturday morning. 10 a.m. and on the Mike Nellis YouTube channel, Substack, the Adam Mockler YouTube channel, and Substack. If you subscribe to either of those, we will continue to relentlessly hit this home.
Yeah, we will. And I'm going to be ramping up my content as I get better from my surgery. Everybody who's watching this on Substack right now, please make sure you subscribe to Adam. Support the work that he's doing across every platform. Follow him on YouTube. He's an absolute phenom there.